There is a deal we have been told that exists. If you study, work hard, play by the rules, and in exchange, you will get a shot at a decent life. Maybe you can buy a place of your own, a small piece of the world to call your own. And maybe, just maybe, you can afford to start a family. It's the foundational dream of the middle class. But in Canada, a country famous for its quality of life, millions of young people are waking up to a terrifying reality. That deal is off. The promise has been broken. The dream of a family and a home is slipping further and further out of reach. This isn't the story of an economic downturn. This is the story of a national strategy in a bid to solve one problem has condemned a generation of its own citizens to a childless, transient future. This is the story of Canada's population Ponzi scheme. To understand what's happening, you have to look at two numbers. The first is Canada's fertility rate. Ideally, you need 2.1 children to replace a population. Canada isn't just below that, it's at a historic low. As of 2025, Canada's fertility rate is at an all-time low of 0.13, and it is clearly on a downward trajectory. The second is population growth. If Canadians aren't having enough kids, how is the country's population growing faster than any G7 nation? The answer is a fire hose of immigration. And the scale is staggering. Between 2022 and 2024, Canada's population grew by over 1.2 million people, a huge amount considering they only have a population of 40 million. But here's the punchline. Over 100% of that growth came from migration, meaning their population would have declined in that time span without immigration. And this isn't an accident, it's the plan. Canada is running a massive demographic experiment using high immigration as its primary economic tool to combat an aging population and a shrinking tax base. It's a population growth strategy that functions like a Ponzi scheme. It needs a constant influx of new people to pay for the system's obligations to the people already here. But this scheme has a fatal flaw. It is systematically destroying the economic foundation required for the existing young population to build their own lives and have families. In 2024, Canada is targeting 485,000 new permanent residents, with plans to increase that to 500,000 in 2025 and 2026. The immediate consequence of adding 1.5 million people over 3 years is housing. You cannot add the population of a major city every single year without building the equivalent number of homes. And Canada hasn't. It's not even close. And the result has been a housing crisis of epic proportions. The dream of home ownership, once a rite of passage for the middle class, has become a fantasy for anyone under the age of 40. The national average price for a home in Canada has increased more than 4 times since the year 2000 and has more than doubled in price even when adjusting for inflation. Prices are now soaring to over 700,000 Canadian dollars for a home in Canada. So if you can't buy a home, what about renting? The flood of new demand has sent the rental market into a death spiral of bidding wars and skyrocketing prices. For young people, it's a nightmare. Trying to find an affordable apartment in Toronto or Vancouver is harder than ever. The average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in Canada shot up by over 8% in 2023 alone. And this isn't just an economic crisis, it's a fertility crisis. The link between housing costs and birth rates is direct and ruthless. When a generation is forced to spend half their income just to keep a roof over their heads, having children goes from being a natural life step to a luxury item that many will not be able to afford. Studies suggest that for every 10% increase in the cost of housing, a country's fertility rate drops by 1.5%. Young Canadians are being priced out of the very spaces they need to form families. Even if they can cram into a tiny, overpriced condo, the sheer financial burden makes raising a child daunting, let alone space. And we're not talking about paying for hockey lessons and university tuition down the line. We're talking about the basics. The estimated cost to raise a single child to the age of 18 in Canada is now over $350,000. So why is this happening? You have to follow the money, of course. The official government line is that Canada needs more people to fill jobs and pay taxes to support social programs like healthcare, and pensions for its aging population. And this, of course, has been turbocharged by influential corporate-backed lobbies like the Century Initiative, which advocates for a policy to increase Canada's population to 2.5 times what it is now, to 100 million by the year 2100. It's a plan that benefits banks who get more mortgage customers, real estate developers, and large corporations who get access to a larger pool of labor. Of course, that keeps wages suppressed. Who doesn't like cheap labor? Probably the native population. But the system is cracking under the strain. The promise was that more people would mean more tax revenue to improve services. The reality is that services are getting worse. Canada's healthcare system, in a way, is buckling. Wait times for essential procedures are at record highs, and millions of Canadians can't even find a family doctor. A 2024 report showed that on average, Canadians faced a median wait time of 30 weeks between seeing a general practitioner and receiving a specialist treatment. And here's the irony of this scheme. It's not even working out for many of the newcomers it's supposed to benefit. The Canada of today is not the same country that welcomed previous generations of immigrants with abundant jobs and affordable housing. New immigrants are finding themselves trapped, much like young Canadians, with poverty rates among recent immigrants being much higher than Canadian-born on average, with around 20% of newcomers who arrive in the last 5 years living in low-income situations. So what's really the endgame here? A nation of permanent renters where the concept of family formation is reserved for the wealthy? The current path created a two-tiered society. An older class who bought into the market decades ago, and a younger, landless generation, both Canadian-born and newcomer, who are being sacrificed to keep the system afloat. This path leads to a future where Canada isn't a society of citizens building a shared future, but a landmass of temporary workers with no deep roots and no stake in the future of the nation. The fundamental contract of Canada has been broken. Canada, or at least its government, is choosing to import its population rather than create the economic conditions for its own young people to thrive and build families. It's a short-term patch that is creating a long-term demographic and social disaster. Unless there is a radical wartime level effort to build housing and to fix a broken system, the dream of a family will die for many young Canadians. The young generation are, in a sense, collateral damage in a grand economic experiment that they never signed up for. Their future prosperity was traded away for GDP growth on paper. The Ponzi scheme will eventually face its reckoning, but for the generation being condemned to a childless future, that will be too late. So how do you see Canada's future playing out? Do you feel immigration in Canada has been a net positive or negative? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and please consider liking and subscribing. This has been Blinded by Logic. Thanks for watching.